Hello friends, today, I'm going to explain the new Spring 2023 anime recap called Vinland Saga Season 2. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. At nightfall, Arnheid arrived at the guest quarters with the intention of caring for Gardar's injuries. As Snake and Fox converse, Ketil's wife urgently requests Snake's presence, insisting that it is a matter of grave importance. Despite her pleas, Snake remains hesitant, citing the late hour and his plans to attend to her concerns the following day. Puzzled by her sudden interest in the farm's security, Fox speculates that it may be tied to the 3-horse bounty that pertains to Gardar's capture. Meanwhile, Arnheid approaches Snake, asking to treat her husband's wounds, but her request is denied. Snake questions why he should bother tending to the injuries of the man who killed his subordinate, but Arnheid remains persistent. Snake and Fox depart to meet with Ketil's wife, leaving Arnheid behind. The guests are left to wonder about their responsibilities, including whether or not they should escort Arnheid back to Sverkel's. As they observe Arnheid, Snake privately acknowledges her beauty and wonders if Gardar's desire to reclaim her is justified. Arnheid fervently pleads with one of the guests to allow her to tend to her husband, Gardar's wounds, promising that she won't attempt to set him free. The other guests observe the commotion and question why Ketil's mistress is present at the farm. The flustered guest explains that Snake had granted Arnheid permission to treat Gardar's injuries. Arnheid tenderly cradles Gardar's face in her hands and surveys the extent of his injuries, noting that he has been beaten severely. Gardar implores Arnheid to cut his ropes so that they may return home together. The guests are unperturbed by his request, as Arnheid has no tools to cut the tightly bound ropes. One of the guests interjects, commenting that Gardar had journeyed this far to reunite with Arnheid and that she ought to show her gratitude in a more meaningful manner than merely applying bandages. However, Arnheid disregards their unsolicited advice and concentrates on the task at hand, beseeching the guest to at least loosen the ropes slightly so that she may treat Gardar with greater ease. Regrettably, the guest informs Arnheid that the ropes cannot be loosened, advising her instead to focus on treating an unbound part of Gardar's body. Gardar, racked with guilt and remorse, begs for Arnheid's forgiveness and vows never to leave her or Hjalti's side again. Arnheid, overcome with emotion, begins to weep as Gardar continues to implore her to start anew and return to the way things were before. In a desperate plea, he asks Arnheid to set him free, but instead of complying, she apologizes and begs for his forgiveness, confusing Gardar. As the rain pours, the guests clamor to take refuge inside. The guest who granted Arnheid access to Gardar is left outside to keep watch, wary of Snake's wrath if he finds out he's being too lenient. Arnheid seems to be taking too long, and he approaches her, wondering what's taking so much of her time. Suddenly, Gardar, still tied up, bites off a chunk of the guest's throat as he gets closer. The man collapses, unable to draw his sword. Gardar urges Arnheid to grab the knife on the guest's waist and quickly cut his ropes. Another guest emerges and is stunned to find his comrade dead. He raises his voice, calling the others to come outside. Gardar, meanwhile, warns Arnheid that they need to act fast, or they'll both end up dead. As Snake and Fox return to the guests' lodgings, rain pours down heavily on them. They immediately notice a knife lying next to Gardar's cut ropes. Upon further investigation, Fox reveals that all 4 of the guests who were supposed to be guarding Gardar are now dead. Snake is disappointed and angry that they let their guard down. One of the guests points out a sword, which belonged to a deceased guard, and tells Snake that traces of fat are visible on it, suggesting that Gardar was stabbed deeply on top of his other injuries. Snake decides that they need to act fast and move out to end this. Since there were no horses left for Gardar to take from the guests' lodgings, he couldn't have gone too far. He commands the men to be on the lookout for Gardar and to kill him immediately if they see him. As the morning light streams into the barn, Thorfinn greets Einar and comments on his inability to sleep. Einar jokes that he must have been trying to keep watch over him, but quickly admits that he wouldn't want to cause more trouble for Arnheid. He expresses sympathy for her plight, noting that she lost her entire family and was forced into slavery overnight through no fault of her own. Einar muses that it always seems to be the innocent who suffer the most in life. Thorfinn takes Einar's words to heart and admits that they cut him deeply. He reflects on his past as a ruthless warrior and the countless lives he took without a second thought. He tells Einar that he's afraid of Arnheid finding out the truth about him, as she's such a kind woman. Thorfinn marvels at how he could have been so bloodthirsty in the past, and wonders how he managed to justify his actions. Einar listens with rapt attention, unable to imagine Thorfinn as a brutal killer. Einar and Thorfinn continue their conversation about the possibility of ending war and slavery. Einar acknowledges that it's a lofty goal, but wonders if Thorfinn's unique perspective as both a warrior and a slave makes him believe that it's achievable. Thorfinn responds that the two are closely linked, as war often leads to more slavery. He adds that while reducing the number of wars could decrease the number of slaves, Norsemen see war as a way to gain wealth and honor, which makes it difficult to change their mindset. Thorfinn notes that fighting is deeply ingrained in Norse culture, with fathers teaching their sons to fight and sending them on expeditions. He admits that it's challenging to imagine a world without war and slavery when it's such a fundamental part of their way of life. Einar asks what that means for Thorfinn, who's a Nord who rejected what was once natural to him. He asks if it's really so strange to live life without hurting others. Thorfinn replies that it is strange to their society, as someone like him would be labeled as a coward and shunned by friends, family, and neighbors. Einar is shocked, but Thorfinn says it's fine if that's the way things have to be, as he'd rather be an outcast than have to carry the burdens of the dead. He tells Einar that the spirits of those he's killed haunt his nightmares. They ask him why he killed them, and why he killed the fathers, brothers and sons of others despite knowing the pain of having his own father murdered. Thorfinn adds that he must atone for killing them and bring their spirits somewhere they can rest in peace at last. He admits he's at his limit, and doesn't think he could take on the burden of even a single other dead spirit. Einar asks if Thorfinn is the only one who can see the dead spirits, or if other warriors also feel regret for those they've killed. Thorfinn responds by saying that he cannot speak for others, but that he doubts they are as tormented by their past actions as he is. He reveals that he has been struggling to find a way to make amends with the spirits of those he has killed, and that simply throwing down his sword is not enough. He feels a great burden to make up for all the destruction and death he has caused in the past. Thorfinn explains that he wants to create a village where no one needs swords, a place where people can live in peace and harmony. He dreams of building a memorial there to honor the memories of those he has killed, giving them a final resting place where they can find peace. Einar inquires how they would defend a place like that without any weapons, as it would be an easy target for marauders. While he now shares Thorfinn's hatred of war, he acknowledges the need to sometimes fight in order to safeguard peace and liberty. He reminds Thorfinn of how far the Vikings can travel on their ships in order to pillage. Thorfinn maintains that it's not ideal for people to have to fight to live peacefully because it would render it impossible to escape from the horrors of killing and brutality. Einar concedes that it must be nothing more than a fantasy since there is no such place in the world that is free from violence. He ponders if there's a place so distant that even the Vikings wouldn't dare attack, where outcasts like them could reside in harmony. Thorfinn recalls the musings of Hordaland from long ago, who had pondered aloud whether there was a land across the sea devoid of war and slavery. Thorfinn tells Einar of the land far across the sea, unreached by the influence of countries and unknown to slavers. Einar is skeptical at first, asking if such a place is even real. Thorfinn confirms its existence, revealing that he had heard stories of it from a sailor named Leif during his childhood. Einar is elated at the idea of going there, but Thorfinn cautions that finding the land would be no easy task. He explains that they would need to bring many other outcasts with them in order to build a new nation. Despite the challenges, Einar is excited to finally have a glimmer of hope for a better future. Their conversation is interrupted as Fox and a few other guests arrive on horseback and make their way into the barn. Einar asks what they're doing, but the guests explain that they are searching the barn for Gardar, suspecting that he may have escaped. Thorfinn deduces that Gardar's escape must have been the reason for their lodgings being searched. Einar immediately thinks of Arnheid and worries about what may have happened to her,